Good evening. Today is December 26th, 2022. The year of 2022 is almost over. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas. And as we're in the last week of the year, heading toward New Year, we hope that things will work out for everybody under the sound of my voice. I have a new job that's taken quite a bit of my time, so some of the videos I was hoping to do uh, earlier this month, I didn't get around to until now. I thought, since I've got some time, a little bit of time anyway, I want to give honor to whom honor is due. This is the first of three videos that I plan to do tonight to honor three different men. The first video is in memory of Ramsey Muniz, who passed away on October 1st of this year at the age of 79. Had he lived till December 13th, he would have been 80 years old. He was a political activist. Ramsey ran for governor of Texas in 1972 and 1974. Each time he was the nominee of La Raza Unida party. La Raza Unida means it was El Partido de la Raza Unida, the Party of the United People. And it was one of the third parties that have played a role in American politics. It's sad but true that third parties don't really get very far in this country. It's only on rare occasions that third party candidates or independent candidates win elections. It happens once in a while, not very often. Usually, if you're not a Democrat or Republican, you have no chance of winning. Well, up until the 1960s, Democrats pretty much took Mexican American voters for granted, whereas Republicans largely ignored them. That's not the case today, and will never be the case again. And it was in the late 1960s at a place called the Fountain Room, which was a bar near the campus of St. Mary's University in San Antonio. The Los Cinco, the Five, would get together to drink beer and discuss politics. There was Jose Angel Gutierrez, under whom I later studied at the University of Texas at Arlington. And there was Mario Compiègne. There was Juan Potlin, Willie Velasquez, and Ignacio Perez, better known as Nacho Perez. And out of this nucleus came Mayo, Mexican American Youth Organization, which in 1970 evolved into La Raza Unida Party, founded at Compostre Hall in Crystal City, Texas, the home of Jose Angel Gutierrez. Now, La Raza Unida succeeded in winning a number of elections, and it's beyond the scope of this video to give an in-depth history to the La Raza Unida Party. Maybe we'll do that some other time because it's certainly a fascinating period of history. But the La Raza Unida Party succeeded in winning a number of local races: city council, school board, and county commissioners court in South Texas. They also spread to some other southwestern states in which there was a large Mexican American population. In 1972, they decided to go statewide. And the man who became their standard bearer was Ramsey Muniz. Ramsey was born in Corpus Christi on December 13th, 1942, one of five children to Rudy G. and Hilda Muniz. His mother's maiden name was Longoria. To help his financially struggling family, he took many jobs when he was a boy. He wrote that during the summer, my mother would be up by 3 a.m. preparing breakfast and lunch for us, as we would depart from the house at 5 and arrive at the cotton field by 6 a.m. She would pick cotton with us. I can still see her face sweating and pulling the 12-foot cotton sack. When it was time to eat lunch, we would all gather around under the cotton trailer as she would distribute the food she had prepared. Thereafter, we had half an hour to rest or nap, because by 1 o'clock we hit the field once more until 4:30. Even as I share these historical memories, I can envision her face, which is full of love, pride, and strength and faith, never give up attitude like no one else in this world. By the time I was 14 years old, my brother Bobby and I would pick 1,000 pounds of cotton a day. I would not even take the time to eat. I wanted my mother to be proud of me. How much love I have for my mother. Well, Ramsey had an interest in politics from an early age. In junior high, he worked to procure equal representation for minorities on the city council at Miller High School in Corpus Christi. And a football player, he once organized a protest. Excuse me, it's that time of day. By the athletic team on behalf of the first African American seeking to join the cheerleading squad. He obtained a scholarship to attend Baylor University in Waco, Texas, my alma mater. I'm a native of Waco. We were not students there at the same time, however. Ramsey got his Bachelor of Science degree in 1967, and he I was still in high school then. In 1971, he procured his Juris Doctor degree from Baylor Law School, having worked as an assistant coach to help finance his studies. While in law school, he joined the newly established Mexican American Youth Organization, MAYO, which held its only convention in 1969. Now, I understand that he had the experience with talking with Anglo law students. He wanted to discuss law and politics, and many of them preferred discussing Mexican food and Mexican whorehouses along the border. Well, he remained in Waco after law school. He spent time with his mentor and friend, William V. Dunham Jr., with whom he worked later as an attorney. He subsequently relocated, and by the way, he also worked for the Model Cities program while he was in Waco. He relocated to San Antonio, where he continued his law practice with Sandoval and Pena. He then worked with attorneys Albert Huerta and Albert Pena in Corpus Christi. At one time, he had offices both in Corpus Christi and in Robstown. I've been through there before. That is between San Antonio and Corpus. And they pick a lot of cotton in that area, and it's interesting to see the water tower advertising their mascot, the cotton pickers. Well, he became active in politics. He lectured at colleges and universities, including Texas A&M at Kingsville, then known as Texas A&I, Texas College of Arts and Industries, Harvard University, the University of California at Berkeley, and the University of Michigan. Other such university speakers in his day were such clergymen as Billy Graham, Jesse Jackson, and Ralph Abernathy, as well as Cesar Chavez, of the United Farm Workers Union, the head of the American Indian Movement, Russell Means, state representative from Georgia, Julian Bond, and black activist Angela Davis. In addressing his audiences, he issued a call for political, social, and spiritual consciousness. And while with the Model Cities program in Waco, he ran as the La Raza gubernatorial candidate after several better-known names in the Hispanic community declined to seek the high office. The minimum age for a state representative, or rather for a governor, is 30. Now, Ramsey was only 29 at the time, but had he won the election, he would have been old enough by the time he took office. And his campaign focused primarily on issues of importance to Hispanics, as espoused at the La Raza Convention in El Paso. There's a famous picture at that convention of the three of the four horsemen of the Chicano movement holding their hands up, their fist in moment of solidarity. In fact, Ignacio Garcia's book, United We Win, Rise and Fall of La Raza Party. This is Jose Angel Gutierrez from Crystal City, Texas. This Reyes Lopez Tiarina of New Mexico, who led the land grant movement. Corky Gonzalez of Denver with Crusade for Justice. A moment of unity in a convention that was not that unified at all. And it's my understanding Ramsey did not speak at the convention, but he did speak at a dance that was raising money for a local union, the workers who were not being treated well. And the campaign, well, he didn't win. He got 6.3% of the votes, which kept Democrat Dolph Briscoe from winning a majority. Back in those days, Texas was still a predominantly Democratic state. And in the 1972 election, this book, by the way, does show one picture of Ramsey right here, in which he is campaigning under a bridge near Uvalde, Texas, during the 1972 gubernatorial campaign. Uvalde was the home of millionaire rancher Dolph Briscoe, who was the nominee that year. And I met Ramsey twice during that campaign. I went by La Raza headquarters in Waco on one occasion and was talking with some of the leaders, and Ramsey and somebody else walked in and said, here's the next governor of Texas. We shook hands. And then there was a dinner and dance that was held at the Waco Convention Center to raise funds for the Muniz campaign. And of course, Ramsey was the keynote speaker. And they tried to bring different aspects, different groups in the community together. There were two African American pastors, that were on program. The Reverend Dewey Pinkney, under who I met him for the first time that day. He was pastor of St. Mary's Baptist Church. I later was associated with him for about a year and a half, and I have some very fond memories of him. He passed away in 1994, but Dewey Pinkney was with the Economic Opportunities Advancement Corporation, EOAC. He was director of the South Terrace Neighborhood Center, and he was also, of course, pastor of a church. And he taught. He didn't actually stay for the banquet. He had a preaching engagement that night, but he came and gave the invocation, and then uh, as he was leaving, he passed by the table where I was sitting, and he and I shook hands. And there was a Reverend Williams. There's several reverends named Williams that I know, and I think he was pastor at Golson at the time, and he was, I believe, he was employed in housekeeping at the Waco Police Department. I was not well acquainted with him, but he was one who gave the benediction. And I appreciated them trying to have a multicultural focus there. And of course, they had a dance with the Hono music, which at the time was pretty new to me. I like it now, but it was different for me back then. A 21-year-old, just learning about different cultures, but a man that over time we'd met before, but we over time became very good friends. Rudy Solano. Rudy is in his 80s right now, and he gave me a copy of the book by a mutual friend, Ernesto Calderon. He was from Waco, but later moved to Austin. Ernesto's in his 90s now, growing up Chicano in Central Texas. But I worked briefly for the probation department. I took a client by to see Rudy because I'd learned from a juvenile delinquency class at Baylor that they helped the police community relations office help people find jobs, and that's where Rudy worked in South Waco. Took this client by to see him, and he said, "I don't care what you've done, and I'm not a damn preacher preaching at you. I'm just talking to you as a personal friend. I'm not a damn preacher preaching at you." At the time, he didn't know I was a preacher. Second time we met, he found that out, and we've laughed about that over the years. He gave me a copy of this book, and he autographed it, saying, "I'm in appreciation for many years of special friendship." Rudy's a great guy. And by the way, Rudy told me when he first went to work for the police department, he's retired now from the city of Waco, but he'd filled out an application in which, with the Open Records Act, you're supposed to have access to your personnel file wherever you work. And the original application he filled out when he went to work there was in that file. And he had Ramsey Muniz listed as a reference because Ramsey had told him about the opening. I think he was driving a truck for Dr. Pepper at the time. But he worked for the police department, not as a police officer, but as community relations, crime prevention specialist, and later transferred to public works, became a supervisor, eventually retired, and doing pretty well from what I hear. Great guy. But anyway, back to Ramsey. In that particular election, as I say, Texas was still largely Democrat. We did have a Republican in the U.S. Senate and had since 1961, John Tower. And John Tower was reelected in 1972. And and the Republicans carried Texas in the presidential race. Richard Nixon won a second term. He did not carry Texas. in 1968. It was won by Hubert Humphrey. But the majority of Texas Democrats felt like George McGovern from South Dakota, the presidential nominee, was too liberal. And so there were a lot of Democrats for Nixon that year. And but it was a very interesting election. The conservative Democrat Dolph Briscoe got elected with 44% of the vote, defeating Republican Hank Grover, who got about 44% of the vote. And the fact that Briscoe won with a plurality rather than a majority was largely due to the presence of La Razonita. Although there was another candidate in the race, I believe her name was Debbie Leonard with the Socialist Workers Party. She didn't get to do that well. But I don't think Briscoe ever forgave Ramsey for almost costing him the election. Well, and LaRaza ran a number of candidates for different offices. Flores Amaya ran for the U.S. Senate, and Dr. Lyle C. Brown, retired political science professor at Baylor, who's a good friend of mine, told me that he had the theory, and I thoroughly agree, that there was a bigger majority won by there was more people. Well, not enough to make the difference, but a lot of people. Okay, Ramsey got more votes than Flores did in his race, and the reason behind that, many people, including myself, felt there was no significant difference between Dolph Briscoe and Hank Grover, and that there was substantial difference between Republican John Tower and Democrat Barefoot Sanders. And so many of us voted for Sanders as well as for McGovern, but we voted for Muniz in the election in the governor's race. Well, I did not know her at the time. We became friends later. Alma Canales of Edinburgh, Texas, was the candidate for lieutenant governor. Alma was only 24 at the time, and she had a very low budget campaign. She had a pickup truck, and she drove to a campaign stop, delivered a speech. They would take an offering, and she got enough money for her gas to drive to the next campaign stop. In 1992, I did an article for the Waco Citizen about Alma Canales for Women's History Month on the 20th anniversary of her unsuccessful efforts to become the first Hispanic female to run for office in Texas and to win office in Texas, statewide office. Well, Alma told me, though, she and Ramsey never appeared together. And she was not old enough, but the party officials said had she won the election, they would have gone to court to get the law changed. And she was defeated by Democrat Bill Hobby of Houston, who won the first of 5 terms. The first was for 2 years. In 1974, there was a rematch in which Dolph Briscoe again was elected governor. This time they had lengthened the term to 4 years. And the Republican nominee for governor in 1974 was Jim Granberry, former mayor of Lubbock. But Briscoe won a clear majority that year, and the then 4 years later, Briscoe sought a third term. That time, though, he was defeated in the Democratic primary by Attorney General John Hill. And John Hill seemed to be overconfident. Um, he was overconfident, and as a Democrat normally would win at the time. Well, Republican Bill Clements pulled an upset. Democrats held on to the other seats, um, except the U.S. Senate, which was won by John Tower. Now, so by the way, the nominee of La Raza in 1978 was Flores Amaya. He did not uh, get enough votes to stay on the ballot for future elections. And in United We Win, Ignacio Garcia describes the experience on election night sitting with Mario Campione in the San Antonio Hotel and watching La Raza party fade into history. Gutierrez had been county judge in Zavala County, his hometown of Crystal City, since 1970. I think he took office in 75. And in the early 80s, he resigned and moved to Oregon. He later came back to Texas, but to teach political science. And then that pretty much ended La Raza party. Well, 1976, U.S. government brought felony drug charges against Ramsey for allegedly attempting to smuggle 6,500 pounds of marijuana into the U.S. from Mexico. He pleaded guilty on one count and served 5 years, or it was actually 4 years, in federal penitentiary. And I visited with him once during that time at the Federal Correctional Institute in Seagoville, Texas, outside of Dallas. And then in 1982, he was arrested for violating parole and was returned to prison. In 1984, I visited with him again at Seagoville. And he had lost his law license as a result of the felony drug convictions, but he was able to work as a paralegal for different attorneys. And then in 1994, he was arrested by the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, in a rental car with 90 pounds of cocaine. And he claimed that it had been planted there, he had been framed, and there was a number of different testimonies about this, about there was some guy named Medina that was involved in it. I don't remember all the details. I've read all those stories and listened to videos about that. And Google Ramsey, you find plenty of stuff about him on YouTube and other sources. But he was given life in prison without parole, 3 strikes you're out. And I was contacted by his lovely wife, Irma Muniz. I'd met her in 1984 when I visited with him at FCI in Seagoville. And at her request, I wrote letters to President Barack Obama, various other elected officials. I wrote one to the Obama's pardon attorney, and even wrote one letter to Pope Francis I. Whoever she asked me to write to, I wrote to and was glad to do it. A lot of other people did too. And The question about guilt or innocence, I'm not going to get into all that. It certainly, a lot of people raised the question if Ramsey had not gotten involved with drugs, what he would have accomplished. I believe he accomplished a great deal, and various Mexican American politicians, primarily Democrat, but even a few Republicans, got their start in La Razonita. You have some prominent Mexican Democrats today, like the Castro brothers, Julian and Joaquin. Their mother, Rosie, was active in La Razonita. And as little boys, they went with mom to party meetings. And so they're called legacy children. And, well, some people saw him as guilty. Some raised the question, well, it's a strange thing to be in the wrong place at the wrong time so many different times. But others concluded, well, even if he was guilty, with his advancing age and declining health, what was the point in keeping him incarcerated for life? On December 10th, 2018, he was released from prison on compassionate grounds. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. I was so glad when I heard that on the radio. And so he had almost 4 years of freedom. He returned to Corpus Christi to his wife, Irma, who provided excellent care for him. He was able to participate in a number of events as his health would allow. And he became a very spiritual person. Oh, something I failed to mention earlier in the letters that I had sent to him, and he responded to. He read a lengthy article that I sent him about the Waco Abraxas Club. I never will forget when Irma asked him, did he remember the Abraxas Club? Ramsey said, how could I forget it? It was an R&R place for activists in La Razonita Party back in the 70s, early 70s. It went from about 70, 74. I would go there one time. Mike Contreras Jr., my Baylor roommate. We were friends for 43 years. Sadly, Mike passed away in 2016, and I miss my good buddy Mike very much. But Mike and I went there one time. He had been a La Raza activist, and Waco was pretty conservative back then. There was a guy named Buddy Moore who operated different nightclubs and for whites only. He'd come to collect his rent. He owned that building where Abraxas met. And while it was operated by Mexican Americans, there were plenty of whites and blacks who came. The late Waco blues musician Tony Calhoun, an African American, stated that at the Abraxas Club that was his first time to ever party with Mexicans. During the last few years, we lost Tony and we lost David Zychek, obviously of Czech descent, another prominent musician who performed there, and an outstanding Tejano star by the name of Joe Silva. And I'm sure there's others as well. They had talent there. I mean, and they got the name from the album Abraxas that came out in 1970, Carlos Santana. There's a quotation on the back of the Abraxas album from Hermann Hesse's novel Demian. We stood before it and began to freeze inside from the exertion. We questioned the painting, berated it, made love to it, prayed to it. We called it mother, called it whore and slut, called it our beloved, called it Abraxas. Hermann Hesse, the German novelist, was introduced to Abraxas through the Seven Sermons to the Dead, the piece written in 1916 by the Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung, who, by the way, was his therapist at one time. And Carl Jung was influenced by the second century Egyptian Gnostic Basilides of Alexandria. I have another video about that. But anyway, Ramsey enjoyed my history of the Abraxas Club, and he devoted a lot of time to reading history, and he became a very spiritual person. He was very devoted to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and also to Our Lady of Guadalupe, the fascinating symbol in 1531, I believe it was, when the apparition of the Virgin Mary appeared to Juan Diego. It's celebrated on December 12th. And by the way, if anybody's interested, you can look it up. And I have a video about that as well. Very much of a universal symbol. But Ramsey he wasn't able to travel and be in as many places as he was in the past, but he made a number of video recordings, and he continued to inspire people to the very end of his life. It was according to, he died of complications of myasthenia gravis on October 2nd, 2022. And he's buried in Corpus Christi. My wife, Deborah, and I extended our condolences to his wife, Irma. And so, if he had lived to December 13th, he would have been 80 years old. But this man suffered a great deal. Life tended to be hard at times. Did he make mistakes? Yes, he did, and we all make mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes. Was he guilty? I don't know. I'm really not concerned about that. He inspired a lot of people to do a lot of good. And his life impacted a lot of people. And I can't say I knew him well. I wish I had known him better. My contacts over the years, I wish I had taken more time to do certain things, to be closer to certain people, but can't do anything about that now. But I do want to broadcast this message. God bless Ramsey Muniz. Ramsey, we love you, brother. And everybody who hears this video, have a happy 2023. God bless.